Draft less than 2 weeks away, and the player who appears to be shooting up the draft board is this guy, quarterback J.J. McCarthy. You know, most projections now has the reigning college football champion moving up near the top 6, and McCarthy knows all too well the highs and lows of being in the spotlight. J.J.'s key to reining it all in, just being zen. The former Michigan QB breaks down his pregame meditation practice that keeps him winning on and off the field.
What I do before the game is a 30-minute meditation, focusing on the inhale and the exhale. All that's doing is training me to be in the present moment. I started this my senior year in high school. Being an athlete that is aspiring to be as great as he can be, you go through some battles mentally, and you want to be fresh every single day. Once I started, stayed disciplined with it, I realized why it was so powerful. What I listen to when I meditate are these certain frequencies, that help tune a certain type of consciousness that I want to set myself up for. Everything's a vibration. After that, I just play Bob Marley. I'd say my favorite Bob Marley song has got to be Jamming. It's something that, gets me in the right state of being, that just sets me up for, complete response to every situation that I'm going to face on the field, and come from a calm center that, helps me perform at my best.
Our NFL insider, Jeremy Fowler, with us 12 days away from that NFL draft. There's some of these mock drafts, and people have McCarthy going as high as 3. And I think, what are you hearing when it concerns the Commanders, Patriots? What are they going to do with that 2 and 3 pick?
Yeah, let's start with Washington. So I know that they're bringing in all these top quarterbacks for visits: McCarthy, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. The prevailing theme around the league, other teams I talked to believe that Jaden Daniels will be that pick. He's considered the safest number 2 quarterback in this draft behind Caleb Williams. So we'll see what that shakes out. But no firm determination from Washington yet. They're going to go through these visits. They've watched all the tape. They've broken it down as a staff, but they have not set their board yet. So once they do, New England's really prepared for anything, I'm told. They believe that Daniels could be that pick at 2, and so they are comfortable with the quarterbacks that are available there at 3. That'd be Drake May. That'd be J.J. McCarthy. So the feeling around the league with them as well is that they will sit put, take that quarterback. They got Jacoby Brissett, who can play a year as sort of a bridge gap quarterback. But they haven't said anything either. You got guys like Marvin Harrison still there available.
Right.
Do they go that route? But the feeling is that they have to take a quarterback, and they need that guy for the future.
Keep in mind, the NFL draft begins April 25th right here on ESPN. Let's talk about some veteran QBs, because there are a number of big names seeking some extensions. Let's start in Dallas and Dak Prescott.
Looking at your mock with the top 4 quarterbacks going in the top 5, you've got J.J. McCarthy going 5 via trade to Minnesota. Why do you think the Vikings may do that?
First of all, the division you're in, Jordan Love, an emerging star. Caleb Williams going to be a star. Jared Goff just wins games, and you're in the NFC, and you get a quarterback like this, and you hit with J.J. McCarthy. Then you got something, you got a talent around him with Addison you drafted last year. You got the great Jefferson. You got an outstanding running game with Jones, and you got Chandler. You got Hawkinson. You got the 2 bookend tackles, O'Neal and Darisaw, and now you bring J.J., 21 years of age, young, right? Hasn't carried a team. Needs to sit for a little bit. You got Sam Darnold as the bridge quarterback. He's played at Michigan. He's played in Ann Arbor. He's played at the Shoe. He can play at Green Bay. He can play in Chicago, and he'll be in a dome in Minnesota. So J.J. in the division makes sense. Having Darnold there makes sense. The supporting cast there makes sense. Once he's ready, they'll get help. So I think it screams trade. Once they got that 23rd pick, now they have the ability to move up to 5.
Doggy, do you think he's worth a top 5
No,
pick?
I do not. Mel, with all due respect, you guys with this love affair with J.J. McCarthy, did we watch the games? Go take a peek. I mean, Maryland, he was awful. Didn't throw the ball in the second half against Penn State. He was not that great against Alabama, and they ran the ball great against Washington. Where in the world is J.J. McCarthy now, the 5th best player in this draft? I would never, ever, and remember, don't say we all know about quarterbacks. Achilles Smith, Andre Ware, Klinger, even Mayfield was the first pick. Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen. We go on and on and on. These teams who made these ridiculous decisions with these QBs. And now you're going to take J.J. McCarthy, who didn't throw a pass in the second half against Penn State. He was 7 of 8. Didn't throw a pass. If you got a great quarterback who's the 5th pick in the draft, you got to let him throw the ball a little bit against Penn State. Good weather. Didn't throw a pass. And remember, that schedule was awful. That conference stunk. I don't care what he did against Nebraska. I don't care what he did against Purdue or Bowling Green or any of these Rutgers. I'm not interested. I'm going to look at the 4 or 5 games. He threw for 160 yards against Michigan. 160. He was not a big deal against Washington. He threw for 140 yards. They ran for 250. And he wasn't great against Washington. Yet Mel, who I love and knows more than me, but I know the guy saw the games. Mel loves him. Orlovsky wants to put him in the Hall of Fame. And now you, Mr. Riddick, love him. You're all nuts. He's not that good.
Riddick's floor is yours, my man.
Okay. I understand that the sample size is not as extensive as you want it to be. You wanted to see Michigan put the program on his back, but they didn't have to, right? They're just in the business of winning football games. Coach Harbaugh wasn't in the business of just trying to elevate one individual and try to prove the fact that he's a quarterback guru and that J.J. McCarthy was better than everyone else thought he was going to be. He was just in the business of winning games. But let's just look at, within that sample size, objectively what J.J. McCarthy was this year. Objectively. He was number 3 in total QBR in FBS. Number 3. He was number 1 in FBS in QBR on 3rd and 7 plus.
3rd and 7?
3rd and 7 plus.
Okay.
He was number 1. He was number 3 in QBR outside of structure. He was top 10 in QBR inside of structure. He was top 10, top 15 in QBR under pressure. So in all of the situations that you want to see a quarterback perform at a high level against high-level competition, J.J. McCarthy did that. For every bad throw you pick out about J.J. McCarthy, I can pick out one that if his name was Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, who I love, Jaden Daniels, number 1 quarterback in this draft, we would be sitting there going, that looks like the next Patrick Mahomes. He has all of the traits and qualities from a makeup standpoint and a physical skills standpoint to perform at a top 10 level in the NFL. He has all of them. What he doesn't have, though, is the resume. What he doesn't have is repeated performances that would make you go, I don't feel that it's a big risk to go ahead and take him in the top 10. He is going to be a risk because you don't have those plays stacked upon one another like you have with a guy like Bo Nix, who's played for, 5 years, 6 years in college football. You don't have that kind of resume. But I will tell you this, supply never meets demand in the NFL when it comes to quarterbacks, and we know we elevate them. Simple as that.
Let me chime in here real quick as the least knowledgeable individual on college football. So I'm going to give it back to Mel in just a second. What I would say by watching J.J. McCarthy, I watched him against Ohio State. I watched a couple of games this year. I certainly was at the national championship game when they went up against Alabama. I enjoyed myself. It was beautiful weather in Pasadena that day, by the way. It was beautiful weather. The point that I want to make is this. I'm looking at J.J. McCarthy in between the hashes. We know that this brother can throw the football. He's done enough, and that they believe that is his strength. At 6'3", about 202 pounds, they believe that is his strength, okay? His weakness is what I'm focused on, which is what Doggy alluded to, okay? Outside of the numbers, what is it? On such pass attempts, he recorded a 27.1% uncatchable throwing rate, ranking 48 out of 105 eligible FBS quarterbacks. That concerns me because this is the National Football League. And if you can't throw outside the numbers, they're going to make it hell for you to try to throw inside the numbers because that's what they're going to do. They're going to play to your weaknesses, and they're going to force you to do the kind of things that is not perceived as being your strength. When you combine that with the fact that it's in Washington, top 5, NFC East, top 5 pick, what is it? Not Washington, Minnesota. I apologize.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I'm looking at NFC North. I'm just thinking about it from that standpoint, Mel. I'm not sold on McCarthy going that high. That's just me. I know you said he's going to sit down and learn for a little bit, but I'm not sold on that pick at number 5.
Well, guys, I gave you the rationale for moving up. I'm kind of with Dog. Dog, it's a mock draft. It's not what my ratings are. So a mock draft is trying to figure out what teams are going to do. I have him at 14, so I'm kind of with you guys on that. He's at 14 on my big board. He was old school, though, guys. He was not throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game. Margin for error a lot different, okay? So some of those throws, he was putting a bad spot on. He didn't have a dynamic Marvin Harrison type. He had Roman Wilson, good player, I have him in the second round, right? But they didn't throw a pass, as you say, a Penn State game. Think about it, fourth quarter, 34 passes total thrown, only 1 touchdown. He didn't need to do that. And then you talked about the national title game. They didn't do this, didn't do that. When he had to, he did.
Now, right now, are we still convinced that Caleb Williams is going to be the number 1 overall pick or Jaden Daniels? I mean, can he creep into the number 1 slot? What are you hearing? What are your thoughts, rather?
Well, Ryan Poles was director of college scouting in Kansas City. They drafted Patrick Mahomes. Caleb Williams, when you gave away Justin Fields, one of the worst trades in NFL history, you just gave him, gifted him to the Steelers, you got to draft Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams was the #1 guy by miles last year. He's the #1 guy this year. Jaden Daniels was a 4th-round pick coming into this year, became the 2nd pick overall. Great move by his mom, Regina, and Jaden to go back and play the other year. I talked to him about it. Go back, win those awards. And he did. He listened, and he learned, and he developed, and he became the 2nd pick. Caleb's been that guy for a couple of years now. You don't overthink it. You take Caleb Williams. If you have Romo Dunze's there at 9, you take him. If he's not, you maybe trade back off of 9 and try to recoup that 2nd-round pick that you lost in that trade for Montez Sweat, which turned out to be a heck of a deal, but you want to recoup that too if you can. But if Odunze's there, you take him. If he's gone, you maybe trade down.
Mel, let me ask you something. How big of a gap do you think that, in your mind, do you feel that there is between Caleb and Jaden? Because to me, just listening to you sound like right now, you feel as though it sounds like you think there's a significant gap between the two. Am I reading that wrong? Just how you feel about the two.
They're not really reading it wrong. It's reconciling the 4th round to the 2nd pick. And I love Jaden. I love what he did, what he accomplished. He did kind of what Joe Burrow did at LSU in year 2. So you want to move him up, and I did. I got him right there. He's the 2nd highest rated player on the board. But I'm loyal, Lou, to Caleb Williams and what he was in 2022. People started to knock him, which they always do. The longer you play, the more they knock you. He had a horrible offensive line, and he didn't have Jordan Adams.
True.
So, again, Caleb Williams, after that Notre Dame game, did have some struggles. But Jaden was phenomenal. Got from 4th round to the 2nd pick in the draft. That's as much of a leap as you'll ever see. But I still have a gap between I wouldn't say it's a huge gap, Lou, to answer your question, but it's a slight gap, but still between Caleb and Jaden.
I like that comparison you made with Joe Burrow, because I think there's a lot of people who probably would go back and look at that evaluation and look at that jump and say, hey, look, you shouldn't hold that against quarterbacks.
Yep.
Because that's what the game is about. It's about progressing. It's about development. And you know what? Look, the Cincinnati Bengals, look, obviously they had no reservations at all taking him #1 overall. And I think Joe Burrow right now, a healthy Joe Burrow, there was a time before this year that people said, other than 15 for Kansas City, who would you want? Joe Burrow would have been the consensus next pick.
I agree.